Let's begin with a clinical foundation. Our first speaker, Brandon Bronaugh, will walk us through the mental health framework for understanding hoarding, including the DSM-5 criteria, underlying causes, and the toll it takes on individuals and families. For over 11 years, Brandon Bronaugh has helped people recover from the effects of long-term hoarding. He has worked with hundreds of clients whose homes had become their prison. They were ashamed to have people visit, embarrassed about their squalid living conditions, and afraid to seek help. Often they really wanted to overcome their difficulties, but they didn't know where to start. Brandon also noticed that people facing significant life changes were greatly stressed, especially when the changes resulted from major illness or injury, the physical or mental infirmity of an aging parent, or the death of a loved one. In these especially challenging circumstances, people battled emotional, mental, or physical hurdles. Trying to manage home repairs, clean a cluttered home, or organize all the details of packing and moving only increased their distress. Brandon wanted to help, but soon realized that very limited resources were available. Seizing the opportunity to make a difference, he established a company to reflect a simple vision, create a transition company that managed all aspects of a family's life-changing events. Lifecycle Transitions is the outgrowth of that vision. To help guide people through the entire transition process, Brandon and his team now provide customizable solutions that help people make better decisions and achieve a home situation that meets their needs and makes them happy. Hoarding intervention is still the hallmark service, and it's the starting point for virtually every transition. However, in over a decade of helping people, Brandon has discovered that most clients need additional assistance once the hoarding cleanup is complete. To help meet those needs, Lifecycle Transitions also provides downsizing, relocation, and move management services to clients whose homes no longer meet their needs. Healthy home prep for people whose homes need minor repairs or safety features before they can return from the hospital or rehab. And in home assistance to folks who need occasional help with routine cleaning, cooking, maintenance, and errand running and shopping. Some clients realize that their best option is to sell their home either as is or after it has been updated or completely rehabbed. Lifecycle Transitions offers programs that help homeowners sell their home for a competitive price, emerge from financial distress, and relocate to a home that meets their current needs. To date, Brandon and his team have transitioned more than 500 families. In the process, he has forged partnerships with healthcare providers and hospitals, as well as skilled nursing homes, assisted living communities, and rehabilitation facilities. He works with community councils on aging, local health departments, elder services groups, and inspection services. A number of cities and towns have recognized the expertise and asked Brandon to help them address local hoarding emergencies and to provide referral services. Brandon's holistic approach to hoarding, cleanup, and transition means that his clients don't have to fumble through their transition alone. The team at Lifecycle Transitions offers everything necessary to complete a transition without spending loads of money, doing tons of homework, or dealing with contractors, legal advisors, realtors, and city officials. Recently, Brandon added another weapon to his growing arsenal of expertise by becoming one of the latest experts on A&E's hit reality TV series, Hoarders. He hopes his unique approach to hoarding intervention will allow him to bring enormous relief to families battling the hoarding disorder and also encourage viewers who are seeking direction and inspiration. And with that, I'd like to bring Brandon up to the stage.
Well, you heard the bio. Thank you. As he said, I am the life transition expert, brother. I've been doing this for 17 years, and I've transitioned thousands and thousands of clients. Yes, I get the call when something happens, something's going to happen, or something needs to happen, usually from a frantic neighbor, the mom of someone. I'm seeing hoarding now actually happen with teenagers, right? Teenagers that their mom and their dad are calling saying that my son or my daughter won't clean up their room and I don't know what to do. What is hoarding, right? We used to think it was just people who didn't want to clean their house. It was just messy. These are just messy people who don't want to clean, and I don't want to be the neighbor of that person. I don't want to be affected by the mices or the roaches. I don't want to be the person trying to put my house on the market when this person next door's lawn looks like a landfill, right? You guys got those calls, right? The social workers, the case managers who come into these situations and they're overwhelmed because they don't know what they don't know. Well, Lifecycle Transitions was a company that was created 17 years ago. And to be honest with you, I started it as a property preservation company. I was working with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and Bank of America, and we were taking distressed and dilapidated properties. And I stumbled upon a principal in a town called Dedham, Massachusetts. And I've never seen this before. And I walked in and, well, first of all, her colleague called me. She had worked with her for 35 years and she was a well-respected principal in this junior high. And she said, I don't know what to do. I love my friend. She told me that she had a bit of a clutter situation. And I'm sure you guys have heard that terminology, a little bit messy. And I walked into this wonderful condo and I was mystified what I saw. Urine bottles in the living room. She hadn't taken out the trash. And of course, in many of these cases, when there's a fire or there's a flood, these people don't call to get service. Why? Because they're ashamed. They're embarrassed. So when the heat goes out, they're more inclined to put candles or put the little space heaters on the floor. They're very creative because inside those four walls is something incredibly embarrassing, and they don't want the outside world to know. In fact, when they get hurt, they're more inclined to usher themselves down the driveway to the street. Why? Because they don't want the EMSs to come into their home. And the reason there is because they're intelligent enough to know that the EMSs are mandatory reporters, which means the moment they come in these environments, they have to report the condition to the authorities. So they get hurt, and I'm using Mrs. Smith as an example. Mrs. Smith gets injured and she ends up hospitalized, and from there she ends up in a skilled rehab. And when she goes into this skilled rehab, there's a case file that would be open from a social worker or a case manager that would say Mrs. Smith's environment is trying and is an environment that resulted in her getting hurt. And now, while she's in the skilled rehab, she's going to be greeted by someone and say, Mrs. Smith, unfortunately, we heard that there are some issues in your home and we want you to address it. Now that embarrassment comes out. So that's why Mrs. Smith would much rather crawl into the driveway or not let that EMS come into that environment because she's ashamed, she's embarrassed, and enough is enough. Well, Lifecycle Transitions was created as a company to help that principal in that particular situation to transition her home. But when we were cleaning out these homes, we realized that the recidivism rate for a lot of our clients after 2 months or 3 months of cleaning this environment is it would go right back to the way that it was. So not cleaning out the environment is going to be the solution. The real solution is going to be identifying the situation, figuring out a solution, but dealing with it in more than one way, mentally, physically, emotionally, in a lot of cases, spiritually as well. A lot of these situations are also predicated because of a person's diet. What I've noticed in a lot of hoarding situations is that their diets are really bad. You're usually eating a lot of processed foods, a lot of high sodium, not drinking a lot of water, and they're not exercising, they're not taking care of their health themselves. And when these environments deteriorate the way that they do, unfortunately, they can't get in-home care. So if you're not getting in-home care for someone to take care of you, then it wouldn't be much of a surprise to realize that that person in that particular situation isn't really going to be able to take off the way that it could. So after 17 years of doing this, we have transitioned thousands of clients. We're now a nationwide company serving all the entire country. And we offer an assortment of services, everything from in-home care to decluttering, to separating, to sorting, to organizing, to cleaning, you name it, we offer it. The reason I wanted to come out here to talk to you guys is not to tell you what hoarding is, because you guys already know what that is. I wanted to come out here to talk to you about what can we do collaboratively to offer a solution to deal with the hoarding cases in and of its own. So that's my picture, as you can see. And basically, what we have now is basically a discussion of why hoarding matters. Well, it matters because over 6 million people are dealing with hoarding every single day. And more than the clutter is the mental health element of it and the social health impacts that affect so many different people in these particular environments. There's trip hazards, there's fire hazards, and coincidentally, we're here because a lot of people in these situations, when there's a fire, the firemen are walking into these environments thinking that this is a living room, this is a dining room. Unbeknownst to them, because of the hoarding, they've completely circumvented the entire layout of this entire place. And not only are they in danger, but the next door neighbors are. And then you have the trip hazards, which a lot of cases for elderly clients means that they're going to get into a skilled rehab. Understanding hoarding. And understanding it means that when I get a phone call from a concerned son or daughter, a lot of times it's a 35-minute phone call. And in that 35-minute phone call, they're telling me that my mom, my dad, they've fallen. I've been trying to get them to deal with this situation. They don't want to deal with it. Every chance we've gotten to do this, that, and a third, nothing works. And a reason that is because a lot of times these people are inexperienced to deal with hoarding. You really want to have a trained behavioral specialist to diagnose the hoarding, because not all hoarding is exactly the same. There are variations of hoarding. The impact of hoarding on the families. Well, let's talk about what that means. Well, if you're the son or daughter of a mom or dad that suffers from hoarding, you're 12, 14 years old, you're not letting anybody come into your home. So the reason I mentioned that to a 12 or 14-year-old, what does that mean? Well, guess what? That 12 or 14-year-old is someday going to be 21, 32, or 40. And when they leave that home, that person is the person that I'm going to have to call and say, hey, Mrs. Smith, your mom has gotten into some issues with the city and town, and they want you to deal with this situation. What do you think their attitude is about that situation? Anybody can guess? They don't care. They're done. They've exhausted every imaginable situation with that relationship. I've been on the other end of these phone calls for many years, calling the son or the daughter from out of the state saying, your mom, your dad is in a situation, they've been hospitalized. We really need some sort of legal advice or legal authorization from you, or some support of any kind for you to come out and help your mom and dad. And they're like, good luck. I've been dealing with this hoarding issue with her for 20, 30 years. So the family dynamic is so important, so much important, that even with the show, in order for you to be a guest on the show Hoarders, they want your family involved. Why? Because they want the support. They want the son or daughter to be the person, when the technicians are actively working with mom or dad, to be able to usher the encouragement that's going to be needed in order for them to make these finite decisions. The hoarding journey, what is it? Does it start with small clutter? Let's talk about what hoarding starts like. Well, first off, it starts with the cabinets, right? Once your cabinets get full, statistically speaking, you go to your countertops. Once your countertops get full, you go to putting things on the floor. And then before long, you have what we refer to as a pathway. And now you're negotiating like a gymnast to get to your bathroom, to get to your kitchen. I've been into some situations with homes that I could not seem to imagine how an 84, 86-year-old woman that has a broken hip and a busted knee can get from one end of the house to the next, but you would be surprised at how resilient these clients are, what they're willing to go through in order to stay in their home. Why professional intervention works? Well, we have an intervention program at Lifecycle where we can meet with the family, we can get on the phone with the son or the daughter, and we can have a conversation, if you will. And it usually starts out with, Mom, you got to get this house cleaned up. You want to sell your home. Mom, you need to get in-home care. We can't get this house cleaned up. Or Mom, you're going to get evicted, or you're going to lose your voucher if you don't get these situations. Most of the time when I tell you, I get the call when something happens, something's going to happen, or something needs to happen, is because something unfortunately happened. Usually the social worker, the case managers are the ones that are calling me all over the country. And they're saying, Brandon, I have a situation, I need assistance. And most of the time, unfortunately, when the case managers, social workers are calling, we don't have any money though, but we need some assistance. We might have a small grant, but we definitely need your help. So in these kind of particular situations, the professional intervention and having support from the family is so important because it's going to offer a more general perspective when it comes to getting the cleanup crew there, getting all the ducks in order to make sure that if there's any minor to major renovations or repairs in this environment, or in a lot of cases, if there's any mold or any air situations that are complicating their health, that those are addressed. And when we talk about health, why does these hoarding situations make a difference is because when there's smoke, there's fire. In a situation when there's hoarding involved, there's a lot of environmental situations that are affecting them, their health. You have COPD, you have pulmonary respiratory disease, and a lot of these people, unfortunately, are being misdiagnosed with an illness that can be fixed with their environmental situation. If we can clean up the environment, if we can deal with the mold, if we can deal with whatever's inside those four walls, chances are their health is going to dramatically improve. What's our mission? Well, we started 17 years ago and we have transitioned over 7,000 clients. Our mission is to offer a holistic approach. We're looking at every situation from a transition evaluation assessment. Every single client that Lifecycle gets, we sit down with them and we look at their entire life. We look at their circumstance, we look at their short-term goal, we look at their long-term goal. And why is that important? Because in a lot of cases, some of these clients may be realistic or they may be unrealistic, let's be honest. Mr. Smith, if you want to stay in this home and you don't want to go into a nursing home, you don't want to go into an assisted living, what are you willing to change in your life to make that a reality? What is it going to cost you to find out that your home has been condemned? Let's talk about, the trauma. What I've learned about hoarding is that most people who suffer from hoarding suffer from it from a multitude of reasons. Some of it is past trauma. I've seen a lot of veterans that go away and come back and they bunker. And what that is after so much trauma in the field, in the field and coming back home, they tend to find themselves in the basement where they feel safer, where the noise and all the outside world can be annihilated or insulating them from harm. If you've experienced, unfortunately, for women who've experienced sexual assault, they feel that insulating themselves in their home by putting more items around them insulates them and protects them from the outside world. I've also seen situations where people in car accidents or been hurt or had a head injury, a major head injury, all of a sudden their personalities change dramatically. They become incredibly impulsive. And hoarding in some cases, in many cases, is one of those things. Recently, I had a client that contacted us and said, hey, we haven't been to my mom's house in 5 years. We finally went into the home and we were mystified and surprised on what we saw. And we had her get evaluated, and they did CAT scans, and they found out she had a tumor. And that was the attributing factor with the reason why she was making these sporadic choices and these decisions. So there's a logical reason, and sometimes there's an illogical, but there is always a reason why hoarders do what they do. Lifecycle's process, as I said earlier, it starts with a transition evaluation assessment. We want to evaluate what's going on with them. We're the first company in and of its own that instead of when we were growing the business, we didn't want technicians or our technicians to go out there and try to figure out what they didn't know about these clients and try to be specialists and try to be case workers. So what we did is we contracted with social workers and with case managers to do the initial intake, to sit down with the client, to really do what needs to be done in order to understand all the pieces in order to come up with a plan. And we have multiple options for a client. If a client wants to stay in the home, we'll do everything we can in that evaluation to determine what are some of the safety issues, what are the immediate concerns. If there's an issue with the evictions or the landlord, if the town or city has an ordinance or a citation or something coming in court stating that they want certain things to be addressed, we want to see that so that we can figure out a solution. Success stories. Let's talk about success stories. Well, I've transitioned thousands and thousands of clients, and in that process, you learn a lot about people. When we started the company, we called it Lifecycle Transition. It was in the celebration of the cycle of life. You buy your first house when you're younger, and then you get older. And as you get older, you become more attached to your home in more ways than one. I've seen a lot of people who aren't hoarders have hoarding tendencies. A lot of times it's perpetuated with a lot of empty nesters. You know, you and your wife, you know, you've been in a home for 30 years, your kids go off and you have 3 kids, and then the youngest one goes away to college. And then all of a sudden you have this house all by yourself. And then you have all these things, and you have these mementos, these memories of, you know, them taking their first steps. And a lot of times the women in these cases hold on to a lot more things. And as things change, as you get older, you start losing people. You know, people pass on. People leave the community, and this neighbor moves here, that neighbor moves there. You experience so much loss to the point that you try to hold on to what you know is familiar. And a lot of that, unfortunately, perpetuates to unhealthy tendencies. So the success story for us is being able to meet with those individuals, sit down, uncover some of their concerns, talk to them, make sure that they can talk to a professional therapist, a counselor, someone who can really dig deep into what some of these underlying issues are, and then come up with good solutions that don't throw good money at bad money or waste good effort on poor results. That's the focus of what we are all about at Lifecycle, but what we're about as a community, which is why we're here, to work with you all in order to find solutions that really, really work, but that just don't sound good, but actually make good on a good promise. The holistic support is all encompassing. Like when I mentioned earlier, some of you guys are like diet, nutrition, exercise, you know, being outside, socializing, being able to communicate with people and not suffer from complete isolation. All those things are attributing factors. You know, getting people out in the community, making sure that if you have an elderly person in your community, Mr. Brown or Mr. Smith, Mrs. Smith, that you check in on them. Because if I had $1 for how many family members or how many neighbors that say, I never knew that they were living in these situations, you would be surprised. So finding a reason in order to go into these situations without it being a health and wellness situation, because that's what usually happens. They fall, they get injured, and then, or someone hasn't heard from them in a very long time, and they go and check on them, and then they find these situations are what they are. If you can keep a closer tab on your loved ones, on your family or your friends or your neighbors, and try to get a way to get to their house. Most of the time, if you have these people in your life or in your family that are always trying to go to your house for Thanksgiving, always trying to go to your house for Christmas, but after 10, 20 years, you've never been to their home, then chances are there's something inside that place that may not necessarily be what it needs to be. Collaborations and strategies for the professionals. Early detections and referrals, unified care planning, building a trust that works together as cohesively as it can. TEAM, together everyone inevitably achieves more. So any takeaways, any questions or concerns, or any questions by any means? Sure. Good question. We have a home rescue program, and the home rescue program is designed for clients in a lot of cases where they're facing condemnation, they're facing foreclosure, the house is unlivable, uninhabitable. We'll do an evaluation where we'll evaluate the condition of the home. We'll give them a fair market value of what the house is worth in its current condition. We'll work with the moving team. We'll work with a relocation expert to find housing, apartment, a condo, or the house anywhere in the country. And within 30 days, we'll get them out of the home and into a new environment and move them in 30 days. Well, that's a good question. We have multiple options. We have our monthly help plan. In some cases, where we'll loan them the money for the cleanup, and we'll spread it out over 6 or 12 months, depending on whatever the situation is. If they don't have the means, then we'll front load the money. In that case, we'll put them in a hotel or temporary Airbnb. And then we'll work out the arrangements and the details for reimbursement upon closing. But we've had situations like that where we've had clients in Airbnbs for 60 days, and we as a company are willing to front load that in some of these emergency related situations. No, definitely. And that's a good question. And obviously our focus is to make sure that we can do everything we can to avoid that. No, listen, thank you guys so much. I appreciate the opportunity.